So welcome to the conference. Could you start by telling us a bit about your role and who you work for?
I'm Senior Research Fellow in Air Power Studies at the University of Birmingham. I obviously work with a range of students from undergraduate level through to postgraduate, and basically trying to build a critical mass of air power thinkers in the United Kingdom.
And we've just had the pleasure of hearing you speak. Could you recap for us very briefly on what you covered today?
What I was looking at was the debate that has gone on for the whole period that we've had air power in terms of how many platforms do you need, what do you want them to do, and what else can do that job, that capability instead. The debate at one stage was just how many aeroplanes Trenchard needed in terms of fighters versus bombers. In the mid-50s, following the Sands Defence Review of 1957, how many aeroplanes did we need versus how many missiles? And now we have a whole series of debates as to what defence is going to look like, what air power is going to look like post-Afghanistan. How many manned fighters, the subject of this conference, do we need in contrast and in ratio with remotely piloted systems and that sort of thing. So I've been exploring some of the issues and some of the challenges, particularly for smaller countries and smaller air forces. And I include the UK in that. We can get into an arcane debate about small and medium, but what I'm talking about are UK-sized countries, but worldwide. There are obviously some particular European country issues, but many of the people represented here will have their own challenges, and that came out quite interestingly in the debate that we just had in the question period.
So there is a step change perhaps in the strategic considerations for this community. What have you noticed in perhaps the practical progress that we've seen over the past few months or years?
Well, certainly over the past few years, the sheer technological advances that we've enjoyed in the air power world have just been staggering. They're absolutely fantastic. But as they become more and more staggering, they become more and more expensive. And that creates real problems for air forces just in how many they need. If you take some of the statistics from the Second World War, that you would need a fleet of flying fortresses, of Lancasters, to destroy a single target. Now we're talking about the number of targets that can be destroyed by a single airframe on a single sortie. So that trend is continuing.
I would probably guess that expense would be the key challenge for all of those in the room today. But what are perhaps the other ones, the other pitfalls as we progress towards the next few years?
Expense is clearly important. But in that expense side of it, just how racy do you really need a fifth generation fighter? Will a fourth do? If you can build, and some of the discussions we've had have indicated that as training aircraft become more capable, surely if you just put ordnance on those, will that not do the job instead? And it requires a very solid head on shoulders, let's do some serious thinking on this, and let's not just get carried away by it. So there are some interesting questions.
This conference obviously promotes that idea of getting together and discussing these problems, but it also promotes the idea of partnerships. What have you seen in terms of the extent to which partnerships are being leveraged to better enable this community?
All the time, and we heard that in various of the presentations. There are partnerships in terms of national level, in terms of what do we want the aeroplanes to do, in terms of sharing air defence capabilities, sharing coalition responsibilities on wider operations, and of course within the companies involved, many of them have been merged. And there are different jobs to do. So partnerships are absolutely essential. It's the only way forward. Very few countries are able to do things unilaterally. Even those that have their own discrete air industries still require other customers and need to be in partnership.
From your opinion, is the International Fighter Conference asking the right questions?
Yes, it is, and I think the important thing about conferences like this is that they give the delegates the chance to network, that's self-evident, but they also have the chance to discuss some of these questions in a safe and friendly environment. I think that's really important.
Excellent. Thank you so much for your time.
It's been a real pleasure. Thank you.